The Last Jedi is now 2 months away. I thought it would be a good idea to talk about all of the books, comics, and video games that will properly prepare you for the movie. With 60-ish days, I figure you should be able to read at least the stories that sound interesting to you. And just in case, I will keep spoilers out of this discussion. First up, I recommend the novel Bloodline by Claudia Gray. The book is about Leia as she starts investigating the First Order and creates the Resistance. It takes place 6 years before The Force Awakens, and at first glance you might be confused as to why I'm saying to read it before we get to The Last Jedi. But director Rian Johnson actually had some input into the story. He told Claudia about the political climate at that point in the galaxy, which will inform some details in his movie. I was one of the people that wished The Force Awakens took a little more time to cover the New Republic, so hopefully this means we'll get to see more of the government, or at least what's left of it, in Episode 8. While we're talking about Claudia Gray, of course, Leia, Princess of Alderaan is on the list, which takes place when Leia is 16 and just learning about her parents' involvement in the rebellion. It's part of the Journey to the Last Jedi line of books, which means it will directly connect with the movie. Specifically, we're introduced to the planet Crate and the new character Amilyn Holdo. I imagine there will be thematic connections as well, but those are harder to guess at before actually seeing the film. No matter what, both Bloodline and Leia, Princess of Alderaan are wonderful Leia-centric stories that are worth your time. Another Journey to the Last Jedi book is Phasma by Delilah Dawson. If I had to guess, this novel is just setting the stage for the chrome-covered stormtrooper to have a more prominent role this December. Fans were kinda disappointed with her in The Force Awakens, but I think she'll be used in a much more satisfying way this time around. Phasma sets her up to be much more terrifying, and it's a story that successfully builds some much-needed hype around her. We also have the Captain Phasma comic. While the novel tells her origin story, the comic picks up as The Force Awakens comes to a close. We learn how she got off Starkiller Base and how she will likely get away with lowering the shields in the first place. I think the purpose of this story is more to answer some questions that The Force Awakens left hanging rather than to provide major hints about The Last Jedi, but there are still some new introductions like the First Order BB unit BB-9E. Next up is Battlefront 2. The game isn't out yet, but the story mode has claimed to bridge the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll relate to The Last Jedi, but we know at least one mission will involve Luke Skywalker. He's easily the character we know the least about in that time period, so I figure the game will have some worthwhile details. Speaking of Luke, I'm looking forward to reading The Legends of Luke Skywalker, which comes out later this month. Again, I can't speak to any actual details about the book since it's not out, but it's part of the Journey to the Last Jedi line, and it's all about Luke, so there will definitely be some hints in there. They might be hard to pick out though, because the book is supposed to be tall tales about Luke, so I would expect some exaggerated truths in there, but it should be really fun to dissect. One more Luke story is Shattered Empire, specifically the 4th and final issue. This comic was part of the Journey to the Force Awakens set, but again, since information about Luke is so sparse, I think there might be some details in there worth revisiting. And finally, I would recommend From a Certain Point of View. I don't know for sure that anything in the collected short stories will have anything at all to do with The Last Jedi, but there are some very interesting chapters in there, mostly the ones surrounding Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Qui-Gon Jinn. I would not be surprised if all 3 of their Force ghosts appeared in Episode 8, and their stories in the book get into some pretty interesting stuff regarding what it's like to be one with the Force. So those are my story recommendations. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've already read them or if you plan to, so leave those in the comments or leave recommendations of your own. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.